Alrighty, I think it's about time for us to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us for our second installment of MagicA11y Live, where we will be discussing using accessibility audits to your advantage. So my name is MagicA11y, and today I am joined by two of Magic EdTech's wonderful accessibility experts. Erin, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Evans. I work out of our US office here at Magic EdTech. I'm part of the amazing accessibility team that we have, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you all have joined us today.
All right, and Tarveen?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. Myself, Tarveen. I head accessibility practice for Magic EdTech at India office. I would like to thank everyone who is contributing towards LE World, and we are happy to have you all on MagicA11y Live Session.
All right, thank you so much, ladies. So to begin, we have a few key points that we're going to touch on, and then after that, we're going to open it up to a Q&A session, but you can drop your questions in the Q&A box at any point during this, and we'll just address it afterwards. And if there's anything that we can't get to today, we will attach it to the recording that you'll get after the event has concluded. Alrighty? So we are going to go ahead and get started on this. Tarveen, can you tell us a little bit about what an accessibility audit is?
Sure, thank you, Anjali. So to start with, accessibility audit itself is a journey and a process. It is complex if you don't have the right strategy and a process in place. To make it easy and simple for everyone to absorb and adapt, I think a better strategy plays a very vital role in ensuring accessibility audit is being done and delivered successfully. It is actually a step that is added in a process to ensure quality, compliance, and inclusion for all. Now, when we say accessibility audit, we have few questions that needs to be answered before we actually move to accessibility audit. First question is, which compliance level and vocab standard are we targeting for? That helps you analyze and standardize the process against which guidelines are we testing the product. Then we need to answer which screen readers, which AT tools, which automation tools we need to pick up. Which age appropriate user are we targeting to? We need to understand the user personas before we actually start with the audit. Accessibility audit helps us understand how well our product and platforms are integrated with AT tools, how well users with disabilities can perceive information while navigating through them. It also helps you give the detailed summary on what is the current compliance level of your product. And it is a report that has a detailed information around recommendations, compliance level, and how we need to perceive information from them. It can be made much easy as a process and as a deliverable if we have right strategy in place. So we'll be talking about strategy in upcoming slides. So that's what accessibility audit is altogether.
And it's, when you hear the word audit, I automatically think of the tax man coming after us and, that it's a bad thing. And an accessibility audit is absolutely not a bad thing. It is definitely something that you can use to assess where you are, to give you that data, as Tarveen said, and to really understand what is going well and where there's room for improvement. It's just a report. It's a detailed report that provides a lot of great information, but it shouldn't be looked at as something scary. There's nobody's coming after you in a bad way. It's just definitely that information that will help guide you as you move forward in your accessibility journey.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that definition, lady. Sorry, Tarveen, did you have something else you want to say?
Oh, I said it was absolutely covered by Erin. Thank you.
Alrighty, so now we're going to go ahead and go into our first poll question. So the question says, why have you/your company engaged in an accessibility audit? Choose all that apply. The first option is to understand our technical compliance. The second option is to see if we are compatible with screen readers and other assistive technologies. The third option is it is a requirement of an RFP. And the fourth option is we've never done an accessibility audit. So we'll give everyone a minute just to answer that.
we would request everyone to answer, because this will help us cover the topics and have clarity on why this is important.
Thank you for those of you who have participated. So it looks like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Anjali.
No, you're totally good. You go ahead.
I was gonna say about half of you guys who are on here answered it's to understand technical compliance and to see if you're compatible with screen readers and other assistive technologies. Some of you said that you've engaged in audits because it's a requirement of an RFP to have a report that you share forward. And some of you have said you've never done an accessibility audit, and that's okay too. And I think that that is, you know, a really good segue into our next topic.
Absolutely. So our next point is, Erin, can you tell us why we engage in an accessibility audit and who does it benefit?
Absolutely. So, you know, as you just saw in that poll, there's a wide range of people and reasons for why you've engaged in an audit or you haven't yet. So, you know, it's really an important tool to help you understand your current state of accessibility, whether it's in one particular asset or a whole program or your whole platform or website. So there are various different ways that you can think about what your goal is as a company, what your strategic need is to get information from an audit before you move forward to engage in that audit. It's going to, the main outcome, it's going to provide you, as Tarveen was saying earlier, the data points of where your product is in compliance as a technical compliance, and you'll also uncover some usability information throughout the process. And it's really important to take these reports and use them to help you build out your roadmap in the backlog of issues that you need to fix, as well as thinking on a longer term perspective on your strategic goals to ensure you are continuing to embed best practices for accessibility and understanding where you need more support. You know, one of the questions that you asked, Anjali, is who does it benefit and how? So one thing that is really beneficial of the reports is that you can use that data to support your business needs and to work and communicate with your stakeholders on investments. If your strategic goal is to make sure that your product, your website, whatever it is you're building is usable by as many people as possible, then when you understand where you have those gaps, you can go to those financial stakeholders and explain how improving and closing those gaps will improve the amount of people that can come to your site. If you're a website that is a consumer website, the amount of people who can go and shop online on your site. There's so many different ways that there might be barriers that you might not know about that the audit can uncover. Another way that it benefits people is that it'll benefit your teams and how you're building. Everybody's in a different place when it comes to accessibility. And, you know, as Tarveen said at the beginning, we really appreciate those that are invested in accessibility in whatever manner that is, and understanding, learning, and trying to apply and get better is really the most important part. So as a product team or a developer, you can see where those steps that you are taking are going really well and where there's room for improvement. So again, these elements of the audits and the reports that you get back are there to provide the data and give you the information you need to support you moving forward. From a communication standpoint, it's really good for your teams to understand where you are so they can communicate it. You know, from a marketing and a sales perspective, you want to be able to be transparent and say, hey, we might have a gap here. We're working on it. We plan to have it closed in, 3 months. And that's okay. It's better to be transparent and be proactive than to be reactive.
Absolutely, Erin. I think you have covered it really well. One thing I just wanted to add on that slide is that we need to be proactive instead of reactive. That enables us. Where are we heading? And in today's competitive world, I think everyone wants to be proactive. And this actually helps us in our growth in our business, and also we ensure if we have a company vision, we'll ensure that we have more and more usage by people with disabilities. We have more coverage and inclusion for all. This will also help us ensure that we are future ready. So we should be ensuring that we are proactive for sure.
Yeah, and you made a good point about the future ready. From a web content accessibility guidelines perspective, the current guidelines are 2.1, and there are updates coming out in a few weeks for 2.2. They're in the final stage. And from a future ready perspective, one thing you might want to consider when you're talking to your auditors is, can you review against 2.2 so that you have that data in hand, so that you can start thinking ahead to be prepared for when the industry catches up and when the requirements catch up to say, hey, we definitely want 2.2 as part of our audit. So again, a lot of it is giving you the information of where you are to help you to get to where you want to go. And one of the things on this slide that we're showing here, it's a diagram that kind of shows an audit life cycle and the different steps of how the audit works throughout the process. And when we're talking about audits, we think about them in different ways.
Absolutely. So this diagram, as it already shows, that it is a multi-step process that is involved in an audit. It's not an easy job unless I already shared you need to have a better strategy in place. So we have differentiated or stepped into 6 different steps altogether when we say the audit life cycle is being done and completed. The first one is we should have the complete understanding of what are we testing, why are we testing, and what is the need. So when we say why are we testing and what are we testing, we need to have in-depth knowledge from the product teams to understand the features, functionality, and why this product has been developed. What is the user persona? How we gonna benefit when accessibility is altogether implemented. Once the knowledge transfer is done, I think accessibility audit team holds a responsibility to create a feature list. Okay, this is the benchmark. This is what we're gonna test. We're not gonna go beyond it. This was the expectation, and we are making this product fully accessible. There could be instances the links within the product are redirecting to a third-party website. So we should have upfront feature list ready with out of scope defined to have better clarity for product teams.
And one of the things with that feature list is also how big of an audit is it that you're looking for. And there's different buckets that you can kind of prioritize those audits into. You can do an audit because you've never done one and you just need to see where you are, and you might request to do that on what we would call a thin slice, right? Just a small little portion to see, this is representative sample of our whole product. Can you tell us what this looks like? There are also audits that can be done on your prototype. So if you're thinking about that product development lifestyle, or as you're building something new, where are you as you're building, and can you look at those as you go so that you can identify errors early, fix them, and then as you move into a full-blown production cycle, they're already addressed. And then another type of audit is that audit that's done once the product's already done. And that can be, as you were saying earlier, Tarveen, part of the business requirement or part of what you're wanting to think about is, what is my use case? How often is this used on a mobile device versus a laptop device? And by understanding what your goal is for that audit, are you trying to review content just on this one device? Is it across all of the different platforms and all different instances? That will determine how we scope that out, how you put that feature list together, and making sure that you're strategizing up front before you get into the full-blown steps of the audit.
Absolutely, Erin. So moving on to the second step, it talks about building up a best practice, how this will be performed. So first is once we have done the understanding, feature list is created, the first step is for us to understand, are we doing a full-blown audit? Are we doing a sample set that is usually termed as thin slice audit, or we're just doing a spot check? Basis that, we come forward with a strategy. For example, I end up picking up a thin slice. Now, what is a thin slice? For example, we are doing assessments. So we know that assessments are usually generated through template-based approach or even a website. We have seen the template-based approach is done for a website. So that's the reason the first question we ask is that, do we have a sitemap for websites? That helps us pick up the right set of platform features or pages as part of the audit. Once we are finalized on what type of audit we are doing, the second ask, as Erin already shared, that we are no more into desktop machines. We have expanded a lot. World has moved completely mobile. We have seen everything is started working on watches as well. And even our electronic devices are like all the more enabled to do many of the tasks. So we need to ensure we are picking up the right coverage. When we say coverage, it's the combination of screen readers, browsers, and AT tool. We can't go haywire picking up the combination, because we know that they hold a good relationship. When we say they work really well together, for example, Chrome works with JAWS, Firefox works with NVDA. So we need to pick up the right combination basis our product need. Once we are done with this subset, like step 2 within step 4, step 2, we should be finalizing on what is our approach. What features are we covering through automation? What features will be covering through manual approach? As we have already seen that we need to understand how and what level of automation and manual can be done. That's the step where you will define these success criteria will be done through automation partially, but these will need manual intervention. Nothing can be done 100% relying on automation tools.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we keep going through this conversation.
Absolutely. Once we are done with this, I think we are ready to pass on all the information to the audit team and get the audit started. Team will be preparing up the audit report. So our final outcome will be the detailed audit report, and our next step, that step 3 talks about, is we should be giving walkthrough to the product teams. It is not that I'm done with the audit, it is ready to go and email is sent. No, we should enable them. We should make them understand. Our audit report should have detailed analysis so that people can understand and build up a roadmap when they look at the report. So for example,
and I just, sorry, Tarveen, I want to jump in here. And for us, that step 3, where we're going through those findings and the details of what's in that report, is a really important piece of the puzzle, because a lot of the reporting and the information in there can be very technical. And for a business perspective, product team, product management, you want to understand where are those gaps so that you can help support your engineering team to make sure that those priorities and strategies are correct. Again, we'll talk more about that as we go through, but that's just, a really key point here is, as you said, Tarveen, not just sending an email and saying, good luck, here's your report, but really spending the time to go through it, get your questions answered, and really understand what was that data that we just found and how do I take it forward in a meaningful and impactful way.
Absolutely, Erin. We should actually be categorizing all the issues under principles, that is perceivable, operable, robust. And we should have the analysis done that which guideline has the major failure, which are the issues that we can pick up first during the remediation phase, which are easy pickup and can help us meet this guideline. So all that information needs to be passed on to the product team, because the way you guys understand accessibility being part of the audit team, you need to ensure that is being handed over with all the required information so that it can be perceived with ease and they can build up a roadmap. We don't want to build up a fear, oh, there is an audit, we have 200 issues being logged. Now they're worried what needs to be done. That's not our job role is. The step 4 talks about once the handover is done, the engineering team starts working on the remediation part. So as we know, the remediation has its own challenges, complexities, and all of that. During this phase, we recommend adding and seeking a support from a consultant who holds very good expertise and knowledge. We have seen really complex problem statements coming in during the process of remediation, and where we need guidance on how exactly this needs to be fixed. So the consultant plays a very vital role being part of the team, and that's what we need to ensure altogether. The second last step in this workflow is getting the regression done. So once remediation is done, we'll have the different multiple rounds of regression where we'll be ensuring the issues or non-compliance that we have reported are getting fixed and they are ready to move out as a fully compliant product. Now, once all of this is done, issues are closed, we might end up categorizing this is only a screen reader specific issue. This is what doesn't fall under the product umbrella. This needs to be categorized or taken care by a separate product team compared to what we are testing right now, which is absolutely okay. End of day, we all need to have agreement of what we are delivering and what we are doing. The last step will be VPAT. Again, VPAT should always be done and delivered once your product is remediated. We should ask what is the requirement, which template are we targeting, which user base are we targeting, and then start building up the product. VPAT. Now, VPAT helps us build up a plan and a charter if our product is not compliant by adding a date, adding a plan and a roadmap towards it.
Yeah, so on that last point, when we're preparing a report and giving back all of the information, a VPAT is recommended, but it's not necessarily always something that you as a business would need. However, it's not a bad idea because it's just a document, it's a report card. That's the way I refer to it. It takes all of the data that is put together and compiled from that audit report and puts it into a user-friendly template that explains where those gaps may be or where you're meeting the criteria. So, we can have a different conversation on a VPAT at another time, but just letting you know that is part of the process of audits. Sometimes that VPAT is what you guys would be requiring, or maybe when you're talking about, hey, I'm doing this audit because I need to comply with an RFP, that VPAT is that comprehensive look at that audit that you can put forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erin.
All right. Thank you so much for that, ladies. I think the life cycle portion of that is really important to understanding an accessibility audit. So, Erin, can you talk to us a little bit about what happens during an accessibility audit?
Absolutely. So, as Tarveen just walked through the different steps, let's think about where we are. So we've now defined through step 1 all of the features that we need to do, and we're ready to get to step 2, which is actually completing the audit. So it is a multi-step process within that step 2. And typically the first place we start are with automated tools. And when we're talking about automated tools in this sense, we're talking about some of the web development tools like the Axe Dev tool, the Wave tool, Arc tool, color contrast analyzer. These are technical tools that can go through your product and look for errors and report them out. They will find things such as the presence of alt text, where the colors may not meet the contrast requirements, where some of your reflow in your stylus, your text reflow might not work. There are elements of these automated tools that really provide some good detail and are custom some time savings in the audit process, but it is super important to ensure that the audit you do involves manual testing. And that manual testing is, the human factor. And the manual testing to say, I am a user, I'm going to use my keyboard and I'm going to try to navigate with my keyboard buttons of a tab or arrow keys to get through the website. And can I do that? That's not something that automated tool can provide to you. So having that real world person sitting there and doing that testing is super important. Likewise, as we talked about with the automated tools, they can define the presence of alt text, but maybe part of your requirement for your audit is, does the alt text have that contextual information that is required, that goes with that image? And that is, again, where your human person coming in, reading the alt text, indicating, does it make sense with your content? That is part of the manual process. And most importantly, too, is the screen reader testing. Some auditors will just, not do the screen readers. And as Tarveen mentioned earlier, there are different combinations of preferred browsers and screen readers that work best. So when we're testing with the screen reader, we not only use those combinations, but we're also looking at involving people with disabilities as a part of the testing. And what that means, at least for us, is that we are ensuring that native users, people who have low vision or no vision, who use screen readers on a daily basis, are going through and testing your website with the tools that they know and use. And they will define those blockers in the bug report. I think I saw in the Q&A or the questions earlier, like what comes into the report. So this bug logging is where all the meat and potatoes come together, right? So that is where each instance of a blocker is noted. It aligns to the specific standard that the blocker is connected to. It explains where it happened, what the reproduction steps are, so you as a product owner can go through and say, yeah, this really isn't working. It explains what is happening, what should happen, and really most importantly, why is it impactful and how do I fix it? Some of the blockers can be a relatively simple, low story point, not too much time to fix and have high impact. Others might take longer to fix, still have a high impact, but it's going to take a longer time. So that's where, as Tarveen was talking earlier, making sure that there's alignment to the different guidelines, providing some severity information on those recommendations and where those bugs are, helps you to understand as you go forward what needs to happen next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Erin. All right, so I think it is time for our next poll question now. We can get that up here. Beautiful. All right, so this question says, what percentage of accessibility issues are identified by automated tools? The first choice is 10%, the second choice is 30%, the third choice is 50%, and the fourth choice is 75%. If you could all go ahead and answer that, that would be great. Give it your best guess.
Wow, cool. So I think most of the people, that is 53% of the folks, have answered it correctly. The automation actually helps us review and unearth issues against 30% of the WCAG success criteria. But when we say 30% will be talking about it, it doesn't ensure 100% compliance against those 30% criteria. And so that's the correct answer, and 50% is a huge number. I would think and will believe that we might reach at some point in some instance that we are doing 50 to 70% through automation and saving a lot of time and effort. But yes, screen reader plays a vital role, as we know that manual testing has its own importance. So we need to understand where are we heading towards while ensuring the compliance and quality.
All right, thank you so much, Tarveen. Tarveen, can you tell us what some best practices should be followed to avoid audit process gaps?
Absolutely. As I have already shared that we should have a right scope defined at right stage. So if we have the scope definition ready, we have seen people just start with the audit process without even analyzing, understanding the needs, why are we doing and what are we doing. So first, foremost important step is to gather all the information, streamline the process, and have the scope readily available that this is what we are testing. That helps you build up confidence and also help you comply towards what you are trying to achieve.
And that why are we doing this is super important, because again, are we doing this because we just want to see where we are? Are we doing this for a large adoption that has this requirement? There's a lot of the why, which really is important, and it really does define your scope.
Absolutely, Erin. And the second biggest challenge that I have seen, that we don't have the owners or the stakeholders assigned within the organization. We don't have the vision statement ready. We don't have the complete profile available, that why are we targeting for the audit or ensuring the compliance. I think having a face to your accessibility will really help. You don't need to go and make everyone understand. It will automatically start executing across the org. So we need to understand, one important aspect is to understand the personas, the workflow and the user experience. The reason we are adding this, as people end up ignoring the user personas and the workflow. The understanding of the workflow will actually help you establish that what type of audit you are doing, whether it's a full-blown audit, it's a partial audit like a thin slice, or a quick spot check. So that's what we need to understand for sure. We need to ensure that product teams are involved as part of the audit. They should have full visibility around where have we reached, what are the non-compliances we have reported, how are things progressing. And the one major thing that I have seen is that accessibility is still an afterthought for many of the companies. So ideally, accessibility should start from the initiation. We should start thinking about born accessible products. We should involve accessibility expert to review the designs and wireframe. That is the right stage from where we should start. That will help us save a lot of time and effort if we have done and remediated the design and the workflow, ensured consistency and few other guidelines related to color contrast, navigation and all of that. That needs to be sorted first before we move on to full-blown remediation. Otherwise, we need to go back and redo the work. The next one is we should be having a better approach around manual and automated. We shouldn't be relying only on automation tools. For example, I think Erin has almost covered about Altex. Yes, we can rely that Altex is there, but who will ensure the quality of the Altex? We need to ensure the right information is being passed on. So SME plays a very vital role in reviewing the quality of the Altex that is being implemented. And the second is people start relying on color contrast being validated through an automation process. But trust me, that's not the 100% coverage that you can get. If you have a background image and content is written over it, the tool will never be able to figure out what is the background on the content. So in that case, you might end up marking and stating, I am fully compliant, because you have only relied on the automated process. But that's not true. We need to have the manual intervention in place to ensure all the parameters are being covered.
Go ahead, Tarveen.
Yeah, similar way, we have seen people started relying on overlays, and they have built up a brand that we are fully accessible through overlays. And we have seen a lot of lawsuits, and I think Erin will be covering it up for sure, how they are impacting us.
Yeah, what I wanted to say, when it comes to overlays, we're not going to dive too much in because it can be a long conversation, but overlays are almost like a widget that goes on top of a website. And there is data and information in an article that was published in the New York Times a few weeks ago, where users of assistive technologies have said that actually when they come to sites that do have those overlays, it is actually harder for them to navigate through the site than if they didn't turn that on. And what we're trying to get at here is that the overlays are kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a leak in a dam. It's not fixing the problem at hand, which is that the structure, the underlying build of the product has errors that need to be addressed. So, when we're talking about not relying on automation, it's not just saying in the audit itself, we shouldn't rely solely on automated tools, but, buyer beware when you're going to websites that have that overlay. Just because it's on there doesn't mean that you're going to have a great experience going through it, and you might actually experience more blockers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, ladies.
Other things to discuss. Oh, no, go back if you don't mind. Other things, we have some more important pieces in there that I know that Tarveen wanted to jump onto.
Yes. The one thing I wanted to continue what Erin said is that automated tools, and the biggest challenge that I have seen is we aren't able to get the concrete output from one tool. So we need to first understand our product type and then recommend, okay, we are going with ArcTool, or we are doing with Axie, or we are doing with WebAM. So we need to understand what is our product type, how it has been developed, and what kind of issues we are forcing. Basis that, I think we should pick up the best recommended possible automation tool that we'll be embedding into our strategy. And the biggest challenge that we have seen is people end up involving experts with disabilities. I have personally worked with them and have seen the value they add to your audits. It is all the more important because end of the day, they are the ones who will be consuming your products. So you need to ensure you have real user feedback at right stage, right time, and that can be remediated, and an accessible product can be generated as a final outcome. So having them on board, supporting them, getting their support during the accessibility audit makes a complete difference to what you are delivering.
And one thing with the inclusion of people with disabilities, as we were talking about in our last session, some of those disabilities aren't physically obvious, right? So it can be, you might have people on staff or that have cognitive disabilities, and asking them if they've acknowledged, hey, I have this disability. If you know that they're looking at that, you can ask them for their feedback. Likewise, you can ask anyone for their feedback. And even if they haven't said they have an invisible disability, they are there to provide you that usability feedback. In this instance, when we're talking about inclusion of people with disabilities within the audit process itself, we are specifically saying, people who are low or no vision, people who rely on screen readers, who rely on keyboard only input because maybe they have a cognitive disability, physical disability with motor skills. There are a lot of different ways to test, and it's really important that those audits include those different disabilities as part of the testing, because as Tarveen just said, it provides you a different perspective that you may not have already considered, and the feedback is priceless.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. And the last point is that please ensure all the information that you have gathered as part of an audit is being conveyed to all the product teams. They need to understand how this is impacting, why this is impacting, and why they need to remediate it. So that's very important for us to ensure that the work that we have done is being taken care by and is moved forward in the cycle.
All right. Thank you so much for that, ladies. Erin, once you have data from an accessibility audit, how do you put it to use?
Yeah, so as Tarveen just said, that last step of making sure that the information from the audit is shared across your organization is really important. The way that we like to do it is we work with the team that has organized the product and has organized the audit, but it's not just here's your information, share it on a recorded session and walk away. It really is being available to help you understand not only what was in that exact report and have the priorities put together, the severities put together, but then helping you strategize your needs because everybody has a different need. And unfortunately, there's no magic formula that says, this is the one you have to start with first. And I think that that's really one of the things that makes accessibility a lot of fun, is that part of it is truly understanding what is the need of my users with this report, this data that I have, and where do I start? So really understanding what the gaps are and just having that fundamental, this is a blocker for XYZ person. And then looking at it strategically and saying, what can I do first? And for some people, you might have a blocker that appears multiple times, like what we might consider a minor blocker, but it appears multiple times on your homepage or your most used page. So it might be more important to fix that blocker on the most used page first before you go to a more critical blocker on a less used page. So it's really about understanding your user persona, your data and analytics of your site, your product, and then looking across the data from that report and trying to understand, what can I do first? How do I want to invest first? And, really understanding you can't do it all at once, which is also really important. It's you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? You can't just take it all in and do it. And understanding where you can work through, get the most impact for what your needs are, and then making sure that you understand how to make those changes correctly, and then get them validated. Come back to the auditor team and say, can you ensure that we did this correctly? Because that's also a really key point, because it can be challenging. There are going to be times where maybe what has been found throughout that audit, you might have to go and reimagine how a feature is built. And that, as Tarveen was saying earlier, if you think about accessibility at the beginning or in the redevelopment and are thinking, okay, my hamburger menu needs to be expanded and collapsed in a correct way. What does that mean? What does that physically look like? What does that technically look like? What does that sound like to a screen reader? Really understanding those different components and working to get that information is going to help you. The last thing that we do have on here, and I know we brought it up earlier, is that many companies will need that conformance report with the VPAT in it. And again, that's the report card that takes the data from that initial audit that was done and puts it in that template. There are other ways that you might be working through it. You might say, okay, I did my initial audit. I found these 12 major critical issues that I want to go and fix. I've done the remediation on that. It's been validated that those tests are updated. Now I want to put my VPAT together to say, I have addressed these issues. Hey, there are more. I'm going to be working on those in the future. So there's a lot of different ways you can take that data forward, but most importantly, it's about understanding what they say and thinking about how to take the information to best support your business needs.
Absolutely, Erin. And I think the best example is holding the baton and ensuring it is being passed on to the right person who can take it forward and make sure that we are reaching the goal that we have set for ourselves.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. So that kind of concludes the first few points that we wanted to do and things like that. So now it's time for a Q&A session with the last 15 minutes that we have. So I'm going to just go ahead and read these in the order that I received them. This one I think we covered a little bit, but in case you ladies want to expand on it, Amit asked, what are types of accessibility audits?
Sure, I'll take that one. So, we were talking earlier about the thin slice audit, which is just an audit on a representative sample. There could be an audit on some prototype elements, or where you're at the very beginning of a product development life cycle and you want to see how those products are building up. There could also be audits on a complete platform, complete product across multiple screen readers and multiple devices. And again, the data that you're getting is going to be based on the scope and the size of of the audit, but at the end of the day, the process of the audit and how that information is logged is the same regardless of your scope and size.
Great, thank you. All right, so our next question, also from Amit, is what are good characteristics of an audit report, and how do we know if we have a good audit report?
Okay, I'll take it up. So I think we have already covered this one as well. Our audit report should talk about the principles where we are falling, the severity, criticality of the bugs, and also the information around the guidelines against which you are failing. We need to have a report in a proper format where we can easily analyze the data bases. Okay, this is related to info and relationship. This is the feature that we have tested. These many issues we have encountered under this success criteria, so that we know what to pick up and how to pick up. So it should carry all the information end to end, along with the detailed information around rationales and recommendations, and the screenshots or the videos wherever required. When we say rational is actually which kind of disability is getting impacted if you are reporting this non-compliance, and recommendation is how you gonna fix this, a high-level solution around it.
Great, thank you. All right, so our next question from Jack is, do you perform manual accessibility audits to WCAG 2.1 AA in the working prototype stage?
Yes, we do. We can do those audits against any stage of your product build at any time that you need that to be done. Again, as Tarveen had mentioned earlier, really understanding what level of compliance you're gearing for is important. 2.1 AA is kind of the industry standard benchmark right now. There are times when it might need to be a AAA or just a 2.0. All of those different combinations are something that we can perform audits against.
And his follow-up, I was just going to say his follow-up question to that is, can you do this for an audience of cognitively disabled people?
Absolutely, we do that, considering 2.1 talks about cognitive disabilities. So we ensure that those specific guidelines are being tested. And Jock, we also try to ensure the people with disabilities, because we ensure that we have partnerships in place and all of that in place, and we can onboard required set of people with disabilities to get the product reviewed, at least to have a age appropriate or a user feedback ready for you.
Great, thank you. All right, so our next question after that is from Ashok. If VPAT is not used as final output, then what should we refer to?
Sure. So, the VPAT is a specific template that is used in a specific form, but really the data of the report comes from that bug logging, whether that is put in an Excel sheet or a system like Jira or Asana. There's multiple different reporting systems out there. So when you're looking at what is my comprehensive review of the report, if you don't have a VPAT, then your comprehensive review is looking at all of those bugs in that system or in that Excel sheet.
And I think VPAT plays a very vital role when you are launching the product. It's a front face for many of the users who are using your product. It will give information to them where we stand today. So that's very important while you're launching a product or owning a product.
Absolutely. All right, so our next question is from Jack again, and he said, I've read all of the various WCAG audit platforms, WebAIM, Site Improve, and DQ tools, all way over my head. What tool/system do you use?
Okay, I'll take it up. So, Jock, when we talk about which automation tool, we need to pick up, as I already shared, that we need to understand what kind of product or platform or a web page we are testing. For example, if I come across a product where I have observed that there are many reading order issues, I would recommend using an Andy tool, because it gives you high-level information around the reading order and it's easy to extract the information around it. But usually we need to do a POC first to recommend, okay, we'll be going through this tool throughout the process, and this is the benchmark that we have set up internally.
Great. And I think we covered this one as well, but I'll just ask it again in case you want to expand on it. Ashok asked, reviewing alt text in context, do we need SMEs for this question?
I would say yes, depending on the context of your stuff. So if it's, a high school chemistry product or some cybersecurity stuff, absolutely, we would pull in a SME to make sure that they are involved in that. There might be some products where the alt text is very easily understood by just looking at the web page. If you're talking about like an overview of the zoo and the section is on sea mammals, then you'd be able to put that together. But in general, we always make sure that if there is a complex topic that we are pulling in the SMEs to make sure that they understand that context. And, as Magic Ed Tech, with what we do specifically, we have a lot of people on staff that are very knowledgeable in the ed space, but we also have people on staff that are knowledgeable across the accessibility space. And again, we would be able to pull in those SMEs where necessary to make sure that that text is contextually correct.
All right. And then this next question is also related to alt text. Jacques asked, for non-decorative image alt text, do you have a tool, or do such tools exist, or do such tools really not exist? How many characters do you recommend for an audience of cognitively disabled people? I think we talked about this a little bit, but.
Yeah, I'll pick this up. So I'll be answering the second part of the question first. When we talk about the character limit, usually it should be 155 to 255 character. That's the best information way to pass on the information, and that's how well the screen reader user can perceive it, and it's easy for them to understand and read through. That's the character limit we should be defining. When we say the tool that exists to review the alt text, contextual review of any alt text is not at all possible through an automation tool. But yes, we do have few tools that help us extract like all the alt text at one place throughout your product, have the information, what are the duplicate alt text within your program, which alt texts are exceeding beyond 255 character limit, and all of that. So we also have our in-house tool that we brand as MagicA11y, and we do have this requirement captured in as part of our tool. We know that this is very important at many instances.
Great. So Jack also asked, I'm trying to decide on Grammarly or Hemingway for text writing for an audience of cognitively disabled people. Which one do you recommend?
I don't know a lot about Hemingway, and Grammarly I've only known really as an extension, so I wouldn't actually utilize either of those, to be honest. Automated or AI tools to create alt text, they don't always work very well. So our recommendation would be to actually find some humans that can write that for you to ensure that you're going to get the quality that you're looking at. Jock, we would love to follow up with you separately to talk through that more, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about Hemingway, since I actually know nothing about it. So,
and I think if we talk about kindergarten to grade 5 kids, we shouldn't for sure be relying on this, because having the complete information passed on with the required set of words plays a very vital role. Grammarly is for professional use, I think, so picking up complex word, grammar and all of that makes sense, but for lower grades, I don't think these tools will anyways help. So SME plays a very vital role.
Great, thank you so much for that. And the last question that we have here, again, if anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat box or in the QA section. But the last question that we have for right now is from Ashok, and he said, which automation tool is best in audit process?
I think we have covered, Anjali. This is all the more we need to understand the product type to come up with which is the best tool. Understand how product is being developed, then finalize on the strategy on which tool we are targeting.
Great, thank you. Alrighty, well, that's all the questions that we have for right now. We'll give it another minute to see if anyone drops anything new.
And in the meantime, we will be hosting another MagicA11y Live before the end of the calendar year. Between holidays coming up over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be kind of tight, but we are targeting one more session, so we'll make sure to put you on the mailing list for when that is finalized. And if there are any topics that you would like us to cover or would like to know about, please drop them in the chat, or you can email us afterwards. We want to make sure that these sessions are covering some of the things that you want to hear, and we're happy to support that.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you all for joining us for this installment of MagicA11y Live. We hope that you enjoyed it very much.
Thank you all so
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.